Welcome to JoyTalk Radio.
Welcome to JoyTalk Radio.
Welcome to JoyTalk Radio,
where we come together to change the world
by challenging ourselves,
our beliefs,
and our systems
to get better results for generations to come.
What's on the agenda today, Joy?
We're going to talk about JoyTalk Radio, and we're going to talk about civic systems and how we get buffaloed into doing civic patterns that are self-destructive to our community. JoyTalk Radio is being designed in this first series to be about civic conversation, and it's to help us as leaders and people in business to pivot from old ways of doing things to new ways of doing things that are more productive for us. Over the last 3 to 5 decades, we've made decisions in our business communities and in our leadership and political communities that have set patterns in place that we've found in various different groups that I've worked with and I've identified as fear-based marketing. There's an official way of talking about marketing today that's called privateering, and I've actually created a privateering model that we'll be able to discuss as something that has economically been used to dominate people and to build the mass incarceration industry to our detriment, to a very severe public detriment. And this is a habit pattern. It's become an economic driver and an economic stimulator in the marketplace. And frankly, we need to turn it around. And to turn it around, it's going to take more than just a little bit of politicking, because this is beyond the Republican, it's beyond the Democratic, it's beyond the political parties, it's beyond the shame-blame game that we use in the media to manipulate people into doing what we want if we're the people who are in charge of the government or politics. So it's time to do the turnaround. So how are we going to do the turnaround? I've developed a model called the Joy Triangle model, and with that model comes a method of being able to understand how fear is used in our society today as a tool. It's called the blaming and shaming gaming tool. It's the good guy, bad guy, victim business model. It's the storytelling model. We use it as a marketing model. If you're in marketing, you use the Joy Triangle model, the fear section of it, to manipulate and shame people into buying or to scare people into buying what it is that you're selling. Our whole movie industry is based on the good guy, bad guy, victim story. And yet in nature, that's not the way things are. We're sold and told that that's normal, but it's not normal. And the aberration of the story is that conflict for the purpose of becoming better, or stress or tension for the purpose of becoming better, the desire to live, that in sports, in hiking, in any kind of competitive thing, the way it used to be done is we would compete to become excellent. We would compete to get stronger. We would compete and we would debate so that we would find out who was more excellent and to improve ourselves. But over the last few decades, we've actually developed an economic model where you compete to dominate, you compete to win, you compete to be the best at killing the other guy. And it's a negative pattern that has actually taken our economic system by storm, and it has become the driving economic force in American politics and the driving economic force in our marketplace, and it's even controlling people emotionally, and we're using fear as the mechanism to drive traffic to our political games. This does not work. So what's the antidote? That's what I'm here to talk about. Do you guys have questions about what that setup is? Do you want to give me any feedback on what I said about that part?
It absolutely makes sense. I can give you that feedback.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, I think that when we are looking at the political mess we're in today, and the fact that our entire democratic process, our whole democracy is actually at risk at this point because of the severe breaches between the Republican and Democrat, the severe distortion of media, the false facts versus real facts. And here in Whatcom County, right here, right now, we've got a incredible and extraordinary opportunity to make a change for the entire nation if we can focus on our hyperlocal problems and our hyperlocal issues, because we are sitting in a microcosm at the border of Washington State, at the northern border of the United States. And we are dealing with virtually all the same problems that the rest of the nation is, just as a microcosm. It's almost like we're in a test tube, because we've got border and immigration issues, we've got mass incarceration and militarization of our community issues, we have environmental justice issues, we got serious social justice and homelessness issues and poverty issues, we have economic issues and pressures. And one of the big things that we've also got is we are sitting at a centrifuge point. We're sitting at a centrifuge, I'm not sure if it's actually necessarily the right word. We're at a pivot point, and we're in a centrifuge actually, because business from all the way across the country, business moves transport goods like oil and gas and coal through our county to Canada, to the Alaska, what do you call that? The Alaska trade circle? That whole northern Pacific rim is what I'm talking about. So we are sitting in a place where the entire northern Pacific rim is accessible through our ports, and our county has multiple vacant and underutilized ports that very large business interests, billionaire, multi-billionaire business interests are planning on turning into major extraction and shipping ports. The problem with that is that we are we're butting right up against a major problem with the environment, where the Pacific Ocean is under risk. We are at risk because of massive plastics that are polluting the oceans in the center of the ocean. We're at risk because of the Fukushima radiation issues, and we're at risk because of the pollutions that are coming down the rivers. And then you're talking about tar sands, you're talking about oil pipelines and fracked gas being shipped out. So there's all of these environmental issues that are causing enormous stress in the marketplace, and our civic leaders don't know how to deal with it. Who does? Who's been here before? None of us have. And so how are we, in fact, as rational, good, quality leaders, going to walk through the gates of time now so that we can make better decisions for our children, for our environment, for our world, and still survive economically? So that's part of the reason that Joy Talk Radio has been created. The model that I've developed is this, as I said, it's the Joy Triangle model, a convert to joy. I'm still branding the name of it, but let's say that it's called the Joy Triangle model, or the convert to joy energy emotional development model. And underneath this good guy, bad guy, victim story, there's the way that I talk about it is that you've got a persecutor, a victim, and a rescuer. You've got a good guy, a bad guy, and then collateral damage. In our community, we talk about you have the law enforcers and the people who are the righteous ones who determine what is supposed to be done. That's the persecuted part. You've got the builders, or the, I'm going to back up. In our community, what we really have is we have the righteous ones is the good guy. We come out, we either stand on the platform that we are either religiously correct, or we're politically correct, or we have the legal power to be right. That's one position. The second position is we're the competitors. We have the financial power, so we want to build whatever we want, and we're going to destroy whatever we want. We're going to extract whatever we want. And then the public is typically the victim. We are the ones that are collateral damage, and we're just consumed in the system. Well, if you look at nature, what there is, in fact, is a body, a mind, and a spirit, which I use to give a sense of understanding as to the roles that you have in the good guy, bad guy, victim. Body is the physical domination of matter. When you are physically dominant and you're winning in the marketplace, which is what our economic model has done, we use money as the dominator, and you just dominate. You bully and you dominate. Or if you're in battle with the righteous kind of side of, the persecutor side, then you're dealing with law and justice, or you're dealing with the government people who are fighting with the money people over who gets to dominate. So one becomes the good guy, one becomes the bad guy, and they change roles. Well, all the way along, the public, which is the spiritual creative potential, the whole creative part of our environment, is the part of the community that is striving to survive. We're the ones that have to generate money all the time to raise our families and do all the things that it takes to grow a family, and we're the collateral damage. So this is a model that makes it easier for us to be able to understand that which is known and physical is what we use to dominate, that which is unknown but righteous is what we use to fight back with, that which is creative and the spiritual potential that we can innovate and change is the third part. So when we move over to this other side, if we're not playing the good guy, bad guy, victim game, what is the game we're going to play? In this model, I've created a builder, leader, innovator game. And that is that when you are in a prosecutor or persecutor or the bullying and you want to dominate, if people in nature, and boys especially, I was thinking about this because I was raising boys when I was puzzling on this question. My sons were growing up in grade school. And I went, you know what, as a mom, if I go out on the playground and I got two boys and they're playing the bully game, what do I do with them in order to stop them from bullying each other? What you do is you put them to work building something, or you invent a game so that they can use their energy to do something useful. So you challenge people to become builders of something that has never been built before. If people are victimized, what you do as a leader is you challenge them to either take self-leadership and take accountability, to go find additional resources that they can use to create change, or to team up with other people who can help them so that they can get more strength as a group. So you teach teamwork and leadership. The third thing that you do is if you're dealing with the person, that's why I've got these pyramids, is that if you're the person who's the rescuer and you think you're so right, if your religion is the best religion and you're right about that, then why are we in the mess we're in? Obviously something must be wrong with our thinking or a behavior pattern around it. And if your business model or your law enforcement system is so right, how come we're still in the mess we're in? So there must be something better about it. This is probably the hardest one for us to look at, because when we get entrenched in the good guy, bad guy, victim story, we get right. We get righteous. We get right about, I'm the best victim, or I'm the best bad guy, or I'm the best righteous one. And so pulling yourself out of that particular hole, this is the leadership role, the white privilege we often talk about, the privileged position. When we become the privileged one and we get used to our position, it's really hard to back off and say, you know what, maybe I'm not right. What am I going to do about that? So this is the innovator role, and you actually change hats and you say, if I was so right, how come we're in a mess? What can I do to change my mind so that we can innovate something new? So that's the whole point of learning to understand how to work with the Joy Triangle model, to use it as a pivot tool so that we can help each other talk through the conversations. There's some other technologies we will use in the Joy Triangle model, or there's some other models that we will use in the JoyTalk Radio, which are intentional change models. We'll use pivot foot techniques. We'll be teaching emotional resilience skills. We'll be talking about transformational change from a large civic standpoint. Because I do think that it's really important that when we start talking about this, that we stay out of just theory and we get real and we talk about what's really up. I mean, if there's something that's personally going on or something that's going on in the community, so privateering is perfect, because that's what's going on right now in Whatcom County. Right. So speak to that, how you see that.
So Joy, you mentioned privateering and the system of the mass incarceration. What I've learned with the work that we have been doing and all the research that's been done for us for so many wonderful people in our community is that privateering is across the board. It's not just in the mass incarceration system. It's in our education system. It's in our banking system. It's in our religious system. It's everywhere. Privateering is everywhere. I know this is not going to make some people happy. It's going to make some people unhappy. But
this is the point of this conversation.
I have seen it over and over and over, and I don't care what system it is. The system works. It works for the system, but it does not work for those people who often are forced to use those systems. And our banking system is one of them. You know, there's so much that goes on that the rules change all the time, and they just get stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. They take more and more of our money. And it's the same way with the education system. Our kids are forced to do all these things, the tests that the kids have to take in school for the schools to get a better score so that they can get more funding. It's just
To take more tests.
Yeah.
it's a joke, and we're just lulled into thinking it's the best thing we can do, and yet, does anyone go look at the rest of the world to see how they're doing it? What are we, 37th in the world in education? It's criminal that all of these taxes go for our schools, and yet our children are not educated. And they don't even know what happened to our Native Americans. They don't know about the treaty right out here in our Bellingham Mummy people. So there's just so much, and we have been what I call snookered from the get-go, from the very beginning. And I just hope that this series will bring some light to the subject, and that some folks will actually decide to look into it and see how they can possibly affect things.
I think the pattern of self-destructive behavior
Mhm.
is pandemic.
Absolutely.
Where else have you guys seen it other than,
I just personally notice it as a general trend of people not wanting to take personal responsibility. If they can stay in their story and be, I'm the victim, somebody else is gonna rescue me, somebody else is the bad guy, then I don't have to do anything, and so I don't have to change. But once you are at that choice point, you realize, I do have power, I do have the ability to make a choice, and I can change my story, I can change my outcome, then you're going into that, to the joy-based side. But it's a matter of taking personal responsibility for what's happened to you and not blaming others and not expecting somebody else to swoop in and rescue you. You have to take care of yourself.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say excuses and reasons. If somebody says they can't make it somewhere, some people will give an excuse. I don't do excuses, I'll do a reason. I'm just touching on what you were saying. Because an excuse is not taking responsibility for the misuse of whatever it is that they're creating the excuse for. It's a big problem, you're correct.
And excuses are lies
Correct,
to ourselves.
correct. Yeah, that you're not taking responsibility for your actions or whatever you did there, and that's a problem.
And I teach my son this, we were running late for school, to get him to school, and I was like, it's my fault, I overslept, we are now in a hurry, I need your help to get going. So I'm taking
Wow.
responsibility and I'm teaching him, sometimes you get running late, but if you take responsibility and saying, instead of blaming somebody else, or my alarm didn't go off, or whatever, things move
The only
along
way
much
to fix
faster.
it, the only way to fix it in the future is to take the responsibility and understand that that was the problem, so you can fix the problem.
Right, and you start out
Everything.
simple,
Everything has a ripple effect.
right?
You know, what happened that happened was actually a really powerful phrase that a friend of mine used in a seminar that I took one time. And we spent all day, literally all day in coaching. And her question to the audience and to us individually was, what happened that happened? And what happened before that happened? And what happened before that happened? And now that this happened, what's gonna happen that happened? So we spent all day diagramming backwards what happened that happened. And what could we have done differently? Every single point, you make a decision, and at every single point, there is a ripple effect and there's a cause and effect. And this is powerful information, because if we can start taking apart our civic problems from the standpoint of what happened that happened, and what happened before that, and now we're at a point, we can't change what happened in the past. The only point we have to make a difference is right now. And so we're in this privateering mess. So we're in a position where we have created mass incarceration. So we are bankrupting our middle class and our lower class citizens. So we have created mass enslavement of our population and our children. So we have created abuse cycles and addiction cycles and mental health cycles and massive amounts of suicide. So we have created a messed up political system. So what? That's where we're at right now. And the whole point of Joy Talk Radio right here, right now, is to say, okay, we're here now, what are we gonna do? Where are we gonna go next? What is the pivot point? What is the choice we have? Because it is the future that we're creating. And worrying about blaming or shaming or gaming the past to make excuses for what's happened isn't gonna help us any. All it does is waste emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual resources.
And doesn't take responsibility. That's what an
Yes.
excuse is.
Yeah, and it's not a liberal thing or a conservative thing or a Democrat or a Republican thing. We're all doing it. We're all blaming the other guy instead of saying, all right, I'm gonna stop right here. I'm not gonna argue with you. We're here where we are. What's our next step?
So as business leaders and as social change leaders and as activist leaders and as family leaders, the leader of our family, the leader of our own self, it's about learning how do we stop, look, listen, reassess, and then take a different action to get a different result. It's all about cause and effect. It's all about taking accountability and taking responsibility.
And you really need to understand where other people are coming from, because you can't be progressive without meeting people where they're at and understanding where they're from. You can't get a compromise and an agreement from somebody if you're not going to understand where they're coming from. If you're constantly, I'm right, they're definitely wrong, you're never going to progress, and you're not going to come to an understanding with that person unless you're going to go to where they're at and understand where they're coming from.
And one of the big things that's really fun, because one of the big things that people will do is they pretend that consensus is progress. Consensus is not necessarily progress. Consensus in an abused family situation is oftentimes what the enabler does to achieve short-term peace and harmony in the relationship, just to cover up the mess. Right now, our country is in a mess, and everybody knows it. In Whatcom County, I'm president of the Restorative CommUnity Coalition, and in Whatcom County, I started working with Irene Morgan, who is in the audience here now today also. We started looking at what are the economic problems that we're facing because of the homelessness, because of the mass incarceration problem, because of the jail industrial complex. And the more we went down the rabbit hole, the deeper it got. And the deeper we went down it, the more problems we saw. And eventually, we looked at it and we meant, that's when she came up with this phrase, the system works for the system, not for the humans. And what's happened is that because of a lack of leadership, because we're all so hurried and harried and we're doing all these things, we have lost track of what leadership and community development is. The Chamber of Commerce is not serving the same role that it used to serve. Visitor and Convention Bureau is not serving the same role as Seroptimus, the Rotary Club, the law enforcement. The world has changed, folks. I mean, the world has changed dramatically since 2000, basically between 1998 and 2003. Every single thing in the world changed dramatically. The thing that got my attention when that happened was the day that I sat back and I had been doing an analysis of what happened to my business. I had been out of the sales business for about 4 or 5 years. I had been in the consulting business, still in the sales industry. And as a consultant, I was consulting all the people who were the salesmen inside this company, and I was consulting to the company itself. And we were doing these big shifts, and then my contract was over, and I came back to the marketplace, and I was going to go back into sales. Sales has been my career for 40 years. 40 years. I had an 80% average close rate on doing presentations, on selling the product, on getting retention. Everything was an 80-20 for me because I don't sell things that I don't believe in. So if I truly believe in something, I educate people about what it is, and if it's for them, they will buy it, and I'm not selling. They will buy it because they sold themselves on the product. Well, in a matter of that few years, I came back on the streets to do my business. I had a 20% close rate. And I went, what happened? Did I really lose the edge because I went and became a consultant? 40 years of pattern? I was in the same industry. I was selling the same kind of product. I was talking to the same kind of people, and I all of a sudden, my entire industry had flipped upside down. And I went, a 20% close rate, a 20% retention? What happened to the market? And I started looking around the market. And I realized, I started interviewing all my friends who were salesmen. I started interviewing all the people who were entrepreneurs and in business. And I said, what happened? And they all said, oh, you know, the market shifted, you know, technology has come along, the internet's here, all these things are different. And they all were self-blaming themselves that they couldn't catch up to the market because guess what? In private, they would admit to me that their close rates were down too. Everything had changed. In public, if you went to the chamber meeting or if you went to the sales meeting, everybody pretended that they were doing great. Middle class was all wandering around saying, oh, business is great, I'm up, everything's going just hunky-dory. And the thing that I found in that moment is that we have a false front face in our economic world. We have a false front face in our political world. You must pretend, we have been taught this, fake it till you make it. You must pretend that everything is fine. As long as everything is fine on the outside, it must be good on the inside. We have someone in the family die, a suicide happens, things happen that are not so good. We'll cry for the day, because that's okay. Everybody is entitled to cry for the day because you got in an accident or something awful happened. But after that, we're supposed to pretend, put yourselves up by the bootstrap and look good. No matter what, look good. And there's a valid reason for that in our marketplace. If you're looking good, then you can bluff the other guys into thinking that you're still strong, so they won't take advantage of you. So there are some certain market competitive advantages that are necessary to looking good. But I'll tell you what, when your marketplace is not looking so good, and the community is dying on the vine, and we're losing a large number of college kids to the jail industrial complex, and we're creating large amounts of suicides in our middle class. We have a generational gap with our middle class right now and our 50 and 60 year old, where our older generation, the baby boomer generation, is killing ourselves faster than any generation in prior history. That's a problem. And that means that we've got systemic failures in the marketplace. And that's when I started looking for what is it that I can do. If as a leader in this community, as a leader of my children, as a person who cares about the future, if I don't stand up and say, what's up? And what am I going to do about it? What good are we? So that's when I started looking at, and I developed the Joy Triangle model so that it could help us figure out when things aren't going so well, what's up with that? And what are we going to do about it?